Welcome, beloved ones, to Module 6 of Entheogenesis, the bliss realms, the mountaintop, and the greatest medicine of all. Thank you so much for continuing on this journey with Darcy and I into the realm of the divine awakening within, that continual arising of this pure state of consciousness that each one of us is, this entheogenesis. And to begin this day's teaching, I would like to offer a very ancient prayer from a Buddhist teacher named Shanti Deva, who lived in the 8th century. This is a prayer, I've been told, that the Dalai Lama recites every morning. I've learned it in English. Taking a few breaths to ground and align yourself. May I be a guard for those who need protection. May I be a guide for those who are on the path. May I be a boat, a bridge, a raft for those who wish to cross the flood. May I be a lamp in the darkness, a resting place for the weary, a healing medicine for all who are sick, a vase of plenty, a tree of miracles, and for the boundless multitudes of sentient beings, may I bring nourishment and sustenance, enduring with infinite joy as the earth and sky, as all beings are freed from sorrow and all awaken. Namaste. Now, in all honesty, I added infinite joy because I'm only going to endure here as the earth and sky if I choose my state. And I'm choosing to be here in service of all life. And I'm choosing to be here in joy. Awesome. So here we are. And in the map of entheogenesis, this framework we're working with to tease out and delineate the vast territory of our inner psyche and the shamanic realms, which are both intrinsic and they're within each one of us. And they are also archetypal in that they are collective, that they're part of the larger morphogenic field, the ethnosphere of not just our own individual culture, but truly the ethnosphere of our global culture. And so we have created this map from our own experiences, individually and together, and working with thousands of others in sacred entheogenic ceremony. And we have found some wild parts of the inner terrain. We've covered some of those, as this is a foundational course and primer. So of course, there's going to be more. But if you know what we're presenting here, if you have this awareness as you enter your ceremonial work or you continue with your ceremonial work, you're going to have so many tools to work with. And that background awareness of, oh, this is what Robin and Darcy were talking about. Oh, okay. This is a tar pit moment. If I take that step, as we were talking about last week, closer to the tar pit, I'm going to get sucked down. If I stare for too long into the dark starts to stare back. And it can get a little spooky. So it's important that we honor the power of the inner realms and the shamanic realms and the psychic worlds, because this is an aspect, a bandwidth of reality that is so powerful that truly it can transform our lives. It can transform our lives in beautiful, uplifting, enlightening, resourcing, empowering ways. And it can also transform our lives in the entropic force of unintegrated, disowned shadow parts. So it's really, once again, a player's choice reality. But this week, we're going to talk about the bliss realms, the beauty of the mountaintop, the peak experience. And what's so important to know about these peak experiences, whether they happen with the psychedelic medicines or master teacher plants or in deep meditation or through a spontaneous moment of grace, spontaneous awakening, as Adyashanti calls it. What's important to know is that we can't live at the mountaintop. It's important to visit the mountaintop. If we don't get that higher view and that higher perspective, we'll never understand the larger landscape of our lives. You know, we won't know where the forest is and how easy it is to get lost and how big it is if we don't get that higher view. This is why the art of retreat has been a part of every mystical tradition and direct path of awakening. There's been this practice of retreating, of coming in, of really deeply nourishing and resourcing, of holding and taking your seat and taking and holding your focus in one direction long enough to begin to understand the nature of not just mind as in the Eastern traditions, but the nature of being, the nature of consciousness, the nature of our one whole integrated coherent beingness. And the mountaintops are awesome. You know, the experiences that I and Darcy have been blessed with individually through this path of shamanic practice and awakening. And, you know, we have researched and pursued so many different wisdom traditions, not to cherry pick, but to find where they come together, to find where those perennial wisdom traditions, like where all the golden threads of those meet through our own direct experience. And the blessing and gift of the ways of shamanism and the ways of plant spirit medicine, ceremonial work, is that it's about direct experience. It's no longer coming as an idea. We can explore the ideas and the philosophies through our personal, direct, experiential embodiment, AKA what's known as gnosis. We define gnosis as embodied experiential understanding. So it's incredibly helpful to work with the master teacher plants and even the psychedelic medicines in relationship, in tandem with other spiritual practices. One, because that spiritual practice, say if you're a yoga practitioner or a meditation practitioner, or as I have been at different times in my life, a ikebana practitioner, Japanese flower arranging at Naropa University, there was a mandatory amount of contemplation credits. And I couldn't sit still very long, but I could consciously flower arrange and turn nature's gifts into contemplative beauty practice. So whatever your practice is, it doesn't really matter as long as it's aligned and it feels to you like it's a way that you can recenter. And that's the most important thing. It doesn't matter the faith background, the ideological background, the philosophical background. What's important is to have a practice that helps you to align, center, and ground to peace and presence. Helps to calm the storms of the mind. Now, this practice married to the master teacher plants or psychedelic medicines can create a foundation where there is a movement from the ideas or the philosophy of that given practice into the direct experience. And this can really foster an inner ground where it's possible to reach that mountaintop. Now, what does this look like for me? This has looked like intense experiences of samadhi, what's known as samadhi, of an awakening of my consciousness into the multidimensional, multi-temporal being, soul that I am. The experience of living in parallel incarnations all at once. The experience in my very first ayahuasca ceremony of reliving every life form on planet Earth from the amoeba up. It was 6 hours. It was excruciating. I was the amoeba. I was a single. I was just every little, from plant life to, the dinosaurs. What is it, like 500 million years of evolution in 6 hours? And I was dry heaving most of the time because it was just so intense. But throughout that entire journey, I could feel the impulse of consciousness to continue to evolve into the I am presence. And then from that I am presence, to stay conscious long enough to recognize my true essential nature. So that was a really great experience. And it's informed my whole life since then. These are some of just a few of literally the countless experiences of higher consciousness, what we call higher, deep states of peace. I've experienced 5-hour shavasanas where my entire system reorganized itself. Amazing experiences, deeply resourcing and nourishing. But what I've really taken to heart is a wisdom teaching from our Andean wisdom traditions, taught by Don Oscar Mira Casada, our beloved mentor, which is that the gifts of the Hanak Pacha, this higher realm, this realm of divine love, were the beings that resonate in the frequency of Munai, boundless compassionate love, where they dwell. These are the beings that are the Buddhas, the Bodhisattvas, the Taras, the Dakinis, the Marys, the Magdalens, the Christed beings, the saints, the Inkamalku, the Inkari. There's so many names for these beings, and every culture has some form of ascended master that connects and bridges us to the Hanak Pacha, to this realm of divine love. But what's taught is that the gifts of the Hanak Pacha, while profound and great, come with an even more profound and great responsibility. And this responsibility is to pay them forward. So any gift of enlightened consciousness, those moments, those peak moments, is only given, it's only a grace so that we can more deeply resource and empower and bring that frequency, that consciousness, that blessing into this world. That's why I began this module with a prayer from one of the most famous Bodhisattva scholars, one of the most famous Bodhisattva teachers, which is we access these higher realms in this state of consciousness, we call the bliss realms, or the mountaintop, not to get drunk on light or for just our own personal evolution, although our personal evolution and our personal healing is absolutely the essential core, the pillar of what we can offer. If we're not embodying it, if we're just thinking it or talking about it, that's what Chogyam Trungpa called spiritual materialism. And that's not what we're about. And that's not what the gifts of these realms of divine love and enlightened Buddha consciousness offer. they offer to us when they recognize that we are worthy to be entrusted with such a great endowment of consciousness, because we are going to give it away. Anything that we're given, we're going to give 100 times more away. And as we do this, as we build up this flow of sacred reciprocity with the higher realms, the bliss realms, the Hanak Pacha, then there's more gifts. And it creates this beautiful circuit, which really helps to sustain and nourish our own spiritual lives, because the greater service that we are in, the greater the challenges. It's not easy to be in service where true healing and awakening are involved. We have to be anchored very strongly in our own personal midline and what we're for, in our ethics, our ethos, but also be willing to see and witness and hold the suffering of others, to walk with them into the hell realms, the La Brea tar pits within, and help walk them back to the best of our ability, which is never perfect, but we do strive to be impeccable. All right. So, with all of that said, within the mystery schools and medicine lineages, the journey of healing and awakening has always been an initiatory path. The initiatory path includes a process of preparation, purification, direct experience, and then integration. And this process is held by our community and our elders, those who walked this way before. Every generation, the process was evolved and refined so that the initiate could both survive and thrive within the intense energetics of awakening and not spontaneously combust, which is also known in other schools of thought as Kundalini psychosis, which is a real thing. This happens. We've met many people who've experienced it. We've almost gone into that ourselves. I've been right at the line with certain initiations. And so what that line is between psychosis and breakthrough is how resourced we are, how held, how loved, how supported, and how much we're willing to show up with that inner will for the healing that is the next level of our initiation, that resolving, that coming into wholeness. And an example of this initiatory path was the Eleusinian mysteries at the Temple of Demeter outside of Athens, which was one of the most famous and remarkable mystery schools of all time. This was a ceremony that happened every year for 2,000 years, where the initiates went into the underground chamber of the Temple of Demeter to die before they died, so that when they did die, they didn't die. I might be misquoting that, but that's basically it. So this practice of dying before you die reaches all the way back. But the preparatory process to become an initiate at the Eleusinian mystery was over a year. This was a process of purification, of alignment, of ceremonial practice, of spiritual practice to prepare. And most people only ever went there once in their lifetime. Very few people were the temple guardians. Most came to receive the great initiation, the great blessing, the death rebirth ceremony, and then to bring that wisdom back with them. Now, things are a lot different now. We have access to literally every psychoactive medicine that has ever been worked with that we are aware of. Like there might be some that have been hidden. We don't have the recipes. We're not exactly sure how to brew the kaikion of the illusion mysteries, but we do have a lot of different forms of acid. And we know that lysergic acid was part of that. We can also book a flight and within 48 hours be anywhere around the planet, working with any medicine in almost any lineage. And the challenges of this are so great because very few people are having enough preparation, let alone a process of inner purification. And this purification isn't just cleansing, although that's super important. Physical cleansing, having our bodies be in a place that is healthy enough, that is cleansed enough, that's detoxified enough to have a productive experience with the master teacher plants. Now you can go not having this preparation or purification process, and you'll have a big experience, but honestly, I can't say that's going to be productive insofar as creating a higher quality of life. A lot of times those experiences, when there's not preparation, can be even more dysregulating. It can be very challenging, and the amount of cleansing and purging can be traumatic. And so this process of actually preparing and being guided and having wisdom keepers actually guide that process, having those who've walked the way before help guide the way, is something that we really need to consciously create or find practitioners that will work with us to create. So we work within an ancient lineage that has remained unbroken for over 5,000 years. It's a golden chain of initiation, and this golden chain has remained unbroken. And within this lineage that is now called the Pachacuttamisa lineage, there's an initiatory journey that, while not what it once was, has evolved to meet this time. And the goal of initiation, the goal of this level of work, this level of the great work, is to consistently be able to access what we call the big love. Now you fill in what big love means to you. To consistently be able to access the state of consciousness, the vibration, the resonant frequency, the emotion of divinity. Now, as we've shared before, divinity is made manifest in the worlds of form as love. Love is divinity in the worlds of form. So when we tap into this big love, AKA bridging heaven on earth, creating a portal of this enlightened Buddha consciousness, when we're in this form of ceremony, in this form of initiation, the aim is to bridge heaven and earth and to create a portal where the higher consciousness of our soul, that aspect of divinity that is each one of us uniquely and yet is one whole being, can be accessed. Because it's from this level of soul, this level of enlightened consciousness, of divinity, that we can truly heal, transform, awaken, and bless this world. Bless all the children and the animals and the sacred waters. Bless all of our elders and all those who are suffering. Bless this life, our own lives. But I would almost say more importantly at this time on the planet, if you're here, you're a fairly conscious and resourced human being, that we learn these arts so that we can be of service to the whole. So in order to enter these realms consistently and safely, there are specific requirements. These requirements are built in to most initiatory lineages, but are almost completely absent in our dominant culture and in the third wave of the psychedelic renaissance. To clearly perceive the bliss realms and to consistently access these beings, this state, this vibration, we have to enter this ancient way of initiation. So that includes doing our work ahead of time to clear and purify what is known as the dross, the old, the heavy, the dense, the unrefined, what in the Andean traditions is called hucha. And this is the old stored energy that we also these days call trauma, baggage, triggers, our hangups. It's doing this inner work before ceremony. It's purifying before we enter these very powerful states of entheogenesis. Honestly, we don't want to be entering these states all clogged up, not having prepared, having binged out on social media or really violent media, having immersed our consciousness in unresolved conflict in our lives, having not paid our bills or being in a place where we've been putting off major responsibilities. I've done all of that, so I could really tell you, could really share from my honest truth that it sucks to go into these big, powerful realms of entheogenesis without tending to our lives in this way. It brings up incredible anxiety and fear, overwhelm, patterns of worry, patterns of self-harm, patterns of self-judgment. And all of those cloud. Those are what's known as the clouds of impurity. And so if we do this work ahead of time, then we can have an awesome time in ceremony and also begin to consistently access and bridge heaven on earth, access this mountaintop. And that's, as a practitioner of these arts, especially important. If Darcy and I don't do our work ahead of time and we come to a retreat or a circle all clouded up, then we bring that to the circle. And that's not something we ever want to do. So our work then as practitioners is to have our life be the ceremony and to do our work ahead of time so that we're not doing our work simultaneously and holding space. Because one, that's very challenging, and there's always the potential that we could bring in our own dissonance, our own interference patterns. And then instead of people journeying within the sanctity and the integrity of our sacred space, they're journeying within that, but also within our unresolved conflicts, our unresolved challenges. And so are we ever perfect in that? No. But we each can tell when we've done our work enough. Like our house is clean enough. You know, could we clean forever? We could, but there's a certain point where it's like, okay, that's good. We can go forward. And that's what I'm talking about. So as we enter into these states of entheogenesis, and we are beginning to clear out the different levels of stored trauma, pucha, dross within our beings. And we're allowing those rivers of light to flow more beautifully. We're accessing more resource and we're clearing the blocks. We need to, little by little, in this way, strengthen our inner channels. Because as we initiate from one level of ceremony to the next, it actually is a great force of energy. And so it's like millions of volts of electricity going through a little light bulb. We must prepare our vessels, as in temper our energy bodies. We do this through radical self-care through a clean body, clean mind, clean heart, clean spirit. Through doing our work, through taking care of the day-to-day life stuff, through living in alignment and walking our talk. So it's critical that we grow and we expand and we initiate on this level through an integral process. If we're not integral, we're going to very quickly get destabilized with the powerful energetics of the higher realms. So we need to be integral. We need to integrally develop. If there's a place in our lives that we are less developed, usually it's the things that we're not as good at, where it's like, that's harder, so I'm going to just avoid that. That's uncomfortable, so I'm going to avoid it. Those are the places that we need to pay the most attention to so that we can grow in a beautiful, integral, and holistic way. If we don't do this, we can become very destabilized, but more importantly, we can become destructive. Now, often that is with self-harm, but as we step into greater and greater fields of service, that can actually be a place where we become destructive to others. If we have a blind spot, if we're leaving a part of our lives behind, if we're not tending to our families, if we're not tending to our finances, if we're not creating a life that's holistic, we're not moving our bodies and eating whole organic foods, all these things come together. So integral growth is essential. If we're not integral, we'll very quickly get destabilized with the powerful energetics of the higher realms, which can be just as potentially destructive as getting stuck in the shadow realms. We call this getting drunk on light, and it's very dangerous. It's very dangerous to get stuck in the higher realms, because if there's a tendency already within us to want to leave this world, if there's a tendency to go up and out, to disassociate, to not be fully embodied, then this contact with the higher realms can actually exacerbate that. So we need to really remember and really own, and I invite you to really contemplate this, that this process of ascension is actually a process of descent. The higher realms aren't up and out there. Heaven is in the body. Heaven is in the body. These higher realms exist within the body. And it's through greater and greater embodiment that we truly ascend. It's through greater and greater initiation that we open more of the light channels, or the circuitry, as Sue Morter calls it in the energy codes. We open the circuitry of our bodies to receive more of our true essential nature, which is the infinite radiance of our soul. And it expresses as love, peace, and all those sweet vibes that bring us into the present moment and how beautiful life is. So integration of any entheogenic experience is so much more difficult to do if we haven't prepared. So there's all these psychedelic integration coach programs, and I'm really grateful that those exist. I'm happy that this type of consciousness is happening. And it's infinitely more skillful to prepare well, because we're not in control once we get into the ceremony. But if we've prepared our vessel, if we've prepared our lives, if we come into that ceremony clear and strong and in a place of self-confident humility, like, okay, I'm ready, that is worth 100 integration sessions right there. So all that we do adds up. Our diet, our cleansing, our meditation, our movement practices, our therapy, how we're working with our relationships, our life, our work, all of it adds up. And there's a teaching from the Pachacuti Mesa tradition, and one of the initiations that each Mesa carrier embarks upon during the 5-part apprenticeship that we offer, and that's offered by many other sanctioned Pachacuti Mesa teachers throughout, now the world. And it's the ceremony called a Paco Wachu, and it's where you go and make relationship with a mountain, because the mountains are alive spirits. And in fact, they're the most enlightened masters on the planet. The most enlightened teachers on the planet are the mountains within this cosmovision. And part of the instructions for preparation is to prepare for the ceremony as if you're preparing to die. So it's like getting your life in order, getting all those pieces that you maybe have been avoiding or that aren't fully clear and formed. You take care of all of that so that when you go up to the mountain, you go clear conscience, free, present. So this is all very important. So working with the entheogens is a lot. It's a lot for our body, our minds, and our psyches. And if you're a martial artist or a yogi or a marathon runner, you wouldn't run a marathon without practice, instruction, and a training room. You're not going to go into, these like very complex yogic positions without practice. And it's dangerous to go into a martial arts competition if you haven't been preparing, if you haven't been getting instructions, if you haven't been, practicing your moves. And this is the same thing with doing the world's most powerful psychoactive substances and medicines. It's not just your body that you're entering these states with, but it's your very fragile psyche, emotions, nervous system, and spirit. So when we don't prepare, which is 98% of people working with the entheogens at this time on the planet, then we're not tempering our energetic bodies. We're not tempering our vessels. And with the large energies, these lightning bolt experiences with these powerful psychoactive medicines, that our vessels can crack, shatter, or become unstable with the strong light energies, or as the big, strong purgings taking place. And this is important to know because we are just meeting more and more people who have become destabilized by this work. And so only you can prepare yourself well. And yeah, we all need guidance in how to do that. That's why choosing your practitioner, choosing the lineage, choosing the medicine that's right for you is so important. That's why we have created and included in this course the Resource and Empowerment Guide to Psychedelic Healing. Read that, contemplate it. What you need is going to be different than what I need. We're different human beings. We have different sensitivities. We're bio-unique. We have different temperaments. Some of us are highly sensitive people. Some of us aren't. So all of that matters for success with these molecules, with these plants. And then when we do take them and we begin to have these experiences of direct contact with the big love, with direct contact with what's known as the Hanak Pacha, with the ascended masters, then a whole next level of discernment and embodiment is asked, because this process is one where we begin to little by little build our capacities And this is usually what happens when we feel the call to be of service as well. We have these breakthrough experiences. And then it's like, wow, I want everybody to be able to experience this. I want everybody to have this level of healing. And this is the call of service that's so alive within the third wave of the psychedelic renaissance. It's a really beautiful call of service in so many people's hearts. And being integral and developing in a holistic way, in an authentic lineage that's guided by deep ethos is not all that common. But true plant spirit medicine ceremonialists have created the inner pathways and relationships with the beings and the energies of the Hanak Pacha, of the higher realms, so that we can reliably guide others into experiential gnosis, this embodied understanding, or what could also be seen as direct spiritual revelation. Our role is not to heal others. The healer already resides within. Our role is to co-create an environment that's so harmonic in the energies of love, truth, beauty, harmony, peace, trust, well-being, connection, heart, joy, compassion, sensitivity, that direct spiritual revelation can happen, where it's not impeded by one of our egos or our own misguided attempts to be the healer. No, it's coming directly from within you, from within me, from within everybody in the circle. And so practitioners that can actually guide others into what's known as high ceremony, which is what Don Oscar calls as bridging of heaven and earth, are incredibly rare. This is a rare level of practitioner because of the amount of devotion required to learn how to access this big love. It requires a huge amount of devotion and consistent, diligent practice and intense personal shadow work to be able to do this. It also requires a great deal of humility and an absolute devotion to walking the way of love, even if we stumble from time to time. The ceremony then bridges heaven and earth for the blessing of all life. The experience moves from just being a personal peak experience and potential healing into the realm of true healing and personal healing being planetary healing. This is really what the big picture of this work is recognizing that through these harmonic containers of beautiful heart medicine, that we can reimagine ourselves and our world as we align the free will that lives within to divine will, as we align that free will that lives within to divine will. So the first steps of creating this form of high ceremony is what we're sharing with you in this course. One of the most powerful tools to help to create this place of high ceremony is the circles of sanctuary. Also is all the inner cultivation of the virtues of love, compassion, kindness, patience, honor, clarity, devotion, focus, just to name a few. And the shamanic technology of the circles of sanctuary works. It works in every state of consciousness, in the entheogenic and plant medicine states, and in the day-to-day. It includes and transcends all the different medicine lineages and spiritual traditions that we work with. And yet it's super simple and elegant. However, the circles of sanctuary and everything we're offering in this course only works if you work it. In order to work it, you're going to need to practice it. And remember, the law of practice states that through study, one refines. We all are practicing. We're all practicing every day. And we're all learning by our mistakes and our successes. So this isn't about being always on it and always there. It's about practicing with humility and devotion and reverence. But we also need to consistently enter these expanded states of heart and love, coherence, beauty, and the bliss realms. Is that our minds need to be trained and our nervous systems need to be able to shift into a deep parasympathetic state on cue. So in our culture, we have very little practice of mental training. Our minds are just running wild. They're like puppy dogs chewing on a bone, like the adolescent dog, which is cute but incredibly destructive when untrained. That's most of our minds. That was my mind, and I still have to train it every day. But like a dog, a trained mind is a happy mind. And below the level of mind is the level of our nervous systems. And many of us are in a consistently overstimulated fight, flight, freeze, or fawn state. Now, I love Matt Kahn's description of the ego, that sense of separate self that causes us so much pain. He calls it the overstimulated nervous system. And I couldn't agree more. So in order to consistently access the bliss realms, we also need our minds to be well trained and our nervous systems to be well regulated. We need to train our minds and nervous systems to work together to be able to access heart coherence, presence, and peace. Now, one of the greatest tools that I found for this is through the work of Dawson Church. He has created what's known as the eco meditation. And I use those cues in the practice, the shamanic journey work practice, softening the tongue, the infinite space behind the eyes. To learn more about that, check out Dawson Church and his work in the book Mind to Matter, as well as Bliss Brain. And that's an incredible resource that, is just one more tool to being able to consistently and reliably enter the bliss realms safely and return home safely, because the mission is always to the mountaintop and back. All right. So now, beloved ones, it's time for the talk. And Darcy and I, we were not sure how we were going to share this or if we should. But honestly, it's just a big part of what's happening in life, being human, and then also within the shamanic worlds and psychedelic medicines, which is, how do we skillfully work with our sexual energy? Because our sexual energies are actually very connected to the bliss realms. So ecstasis, those states of ecstasy, and the peak experience can be very woven together. We're wired for the sacred, but we are also wired for pleasure. But we so often experience pain. So to bring about states of healing is to bring about environments where our nervous system can shift into a parasympathetic state, where we can bring in and open our pleasure receptors, not necessarily our sexual pleasure receptors, but open to the beauty of life through gentleness, comfort, ease, and grace. We feel that these are essential components to the healing container. When we cannot ground these energies of gentleness and comfort and love in that place of being deeply loved as we were loved, as the noble mother or noble father loves their child, that type of love. When we can't ground these energies, we often grasp for sexual pleasure. So when we can't be with the nervous system gently and slowly opening so we can enter more and more and more of the higher states, then we often get diverted into sexual pleasure. And sexuality and reclaiming our sacred sexuality is so important. Because as we reclaim the sanctity of our bodies, our body autonomy, our spiritual sovereignty, and the power of our consent, then we can begin to reclaim our sacred sexuality. And this brings us to this experience of pleasure in its pristine innocence, which is this innocent joy of life. You know, the pleasure that a baby has in being held and being cuddled, or the pleasure a cat gets when having its head stroked. You know, this innocent pleasure of being embodied. And in order to be truly well, we're actually wired for love, for pleasure, for attachment, for belonging. We need physical touch, emotional connection. And all of this, unfortunately, so often has been grossly distorted. So to reclaim our body autonomy and our spiritual sovereignty, to reclaim the invincible innocence within, is also to reclaim the innocence of pleasure. So often within the plant spirit medicine ceremonial arts, there is certain restrictions around sex, sexual energy. And at first I was like, well, I'm not down with that. Just not gonna, like, it's just like, that seems very, it seemed very much like a hangover from, Catholicism, or these different levels of sex being dirty, sex being bad. And while honestly, in some traditions, that is the case, I and Darcy and I have come to a different understanding. So the sexual energies and healing our bodies is really about reclaiming the creative power within us. Now, many, many, many of us, in fact, I've never met anyone who doesn't have healing to do within their sexuality, myself included. I've never met a single person who doesn't have some healing to do within their sexuality. And so when we begin our work with the plants, when we begin our healing journey, it can be really, really important to seal our energy bodies up while working with the plants. So this is why in ayahuasca traditions, in actually so many different plant medicine traditions, there can be a period of abstinence or a dieta before the ceremony and after the ceremony. And this can be incredibly important in the beginning of our work, and if we are not in a long-term committed healthy relationship, which not that many people are. That when we have sex with somebody else, it actually is the quickest way to jumble up our energies. And so here we are doing all this healing work, but then we have sex with somebody or become sexual, and it can interfere with everything we've just cultivated in ourselves. This is something that little by little, as we heal more of our bodies, as we heal more of our psyches and our sexual energies and our energy body, then we can begin to have greater clarity of what actually is true pleasure, what we actually have consent for, and what we don't, which often when we come to the plant medicines in the beginning is all disorganized. We've been imprinted and conditioned into a very toxic sexual culture across the board. There's very few healthy sexual cultures or cultures that have healthy relationship to sexual energy in the world right now. So we're all healing up from this. But one of the things that I really want to speak to is something that we've seen over and over and over, and that is maddening. It brings up such intense anger for me. And this is shamanic practitioners having sex with participants or some form of transference of sexual energy. And we can stand firmly in the belief and the knowing that consensual sex is not possible between a shaman and a participant. There's too many power dynamics. And just like in Western psychology, when it's done well and not in violation of the ethics, that you can't be in relationship with a previous or current client. There's always an inherent power differential. And this is true across many Western fields of healing arts and medicine. And there's a reason why. And we have had so many situations brought to our door of a shaman, a shamanic practitioner. This has happened throughout North American, South American, Central American traditions, sleeping with participants. This has also happened, wildly enough, within the psychedelic therapy movement with people who are trained psychologists, who are trained in these ways, but their own unclarity with the enhancement of the psychedelics begins to get blurry. There's distortion that comes in. And so after about, I don't know, over a dozen of these situations, we are absolutely clear and adamant that there just cannot be consensual sex within these realms of facilitator and participant. And so discernment is always required. But what's wild is how with the bliss realms and the entheogens and the psychedelic medicines, it can be incredibly orgasmic. It can feel so good. When you have a healing that is literally orgasms running up and down your body for hours, which both Darcy and I have had independently, not at the same time, not in the same environment, that, all of a sudden it's like, oh, this energy that I've called sexual energy or orgasm or pleasure is actually the most profound healing life force energy. But only after we clean up and we clear up and we purify our vessels, which is a path of initiation, which is the greater practice of these arts. And so to conclude, we have been covering a vast terrain within this 7-week journey. The map of entheogenesis includes the mountaintop and the bliss realms. And that's so beautiful. And we can't live at the mountaintop, nor do we want to live in any one area. The labyrinth of the past, even the rivers of light, the shadow realms, the La Brea tar pits, but we want to understand the holism of what it means to be a divine spiritual being having a human experience, to be fully in this embodied journey and to open to the continual arising of this divinity from within. Thank you so much for journeying with us. I know this has been a big download today, and I really invite you to take some time to sit, to contemplate, and to inquire into these teachings. And if you're interested in experiencing high ceremony, to sign up for one of our in-person retreats, especially where we have 2 to 3 ceremonies. That's when we can really open the gateway that bridges heaven and earth. And it's so beautiful. Ayumasi Kanapa, we are all one family, all my relations.